In the late afternoon of August 14th, 1976, a University of Tennessee student came upon a grim scene in Rabbit Creek. They found the body of a lifeless woman with blood all over her clothing. After attempting to wake the woman, the student found help from Ranger Higgins at the Cades Cove Visitor Center. Higgins and the student went back to the scene around 5:30 p.m. Immediately, Higgins noticed that there were marks on the side of the road that led down to where the body lay. These marks were thought to be drag marks. The body in the creek was that of a middle-aged woman with no pulse. Her half-opened eyes pierced upwards as her eyeshadow was smeared. Her fingernails were painted pink, but she wore no lipstick. She wore hose, but no shoes were found. A wound on the left side of her skull indicated a possible gunshot wound. The woman had sustained injuries across her body, including bruises to her arms and ribs. She had been beaten. As procedure states for a murder in a national park, Ranger Higgins called in the FBI and the county coroner. The autopsy confirmed that the woman had been shot by a .38 caliber handgun, and she had died around noon the day she was discovered. Interestingly, the woman had no identification, and there were no reports of a missing woman anywhere. Over the next couple of weeks, multiple news outlets ran descriptions and photos of the woman, hoping someone knew who she was. On August 27th, the same day the woman's photo ran in the Daily Times, the Blount County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous call that turned the case upside down. The caller asked, "You know that body you found in the park a couple of weeks ago? If you look close, you will find another." After rangers spent hours in an unsuccessful search of another body, the call was thought to be a hoax. About a month later, on September 18th, an Indiana man successfully identified the body as that of his sister-in-law, Emily Moore. Emily Moore had been reported missing in Indiana on August 12th, which was 2 days before her body was found in the park. This was a time when communication between states was limited at best, so it wasn't out of the ordinary for her report not to reach the other states. Now that the largest question in the case had been answered, what could detectives glean from this new information? Well, they first found out that Emily and her husband, Lauren, had been accused of fraud. While there was no indication that her husband had killed her, it was something the police would keep their eye on. As they began piecing her last couple of days together, they found that Emily talked to her brother-in-law at noon the day she disappeared. He said she was packing for a trip to Chicago. When they searched her home, they found her 2 suitcases packed at the house. Her car still sat in the driveway of her home. As news hit Indiana of Emily's death, a restaurant owner named Leslie Diane Standifer had left town. Standifer would then become the police's main suspect. 2 months later, Standifer's car was found in Las Vegas, Nevada, with blood traces that matched Emily Moore inside the vehicle. The upholstery of the passenger seat had been completely ripped out, a fairly obvious sign that this might have been where Emily was killed. After some more detective work, police found records of a business deal between Standifer and Moore that involved a restaurant. Apparently, Moore sold Standifer a restaurant, and Standifer began to have buyer's remorse about the price she had paid. Standifer reclaimed the funds were in a bank in Chicago, and that the two of them would go together to retrieve them. Well, when Standifer arrived at Emily Moore's home, she had other plans. Standifer and Moore arrived in Townsend the day before Emily was killed. At that point, she had most likely kidnapped Moore. Standifer had placed the body in a remote section of the park that only by chance had been stumbled upon. Otherwise, Standifer might have gotten away with it all. Even though a warrant was issued for Standifer's arrest on November 30th, police had no clue where she was. During the search, a woman was hired at a local restaurant in Los Angeles, California, by the name of Stacy Jo Michaels. A short time later, another woman, younger though, was hired as a cashier at the restaurant. The young woman then asked Stacy if she was her mother. Standifer, who was posing as Stacy, ran into her daughter from a previous marriage while trying to hide out in L.A. Even though the daughter never revealed her mother's true identity, her ex-husband did. Standifer was placed under arrest on May 18, 1977, nearly 8 months after Emily Moore's death. The Knox County jury only took 4 hours to deliver the guilty verdict, and Standifer was sent to West Virginia to serve life in federal prison. However, the story didn't end there. Standifer, on October 21, 1979, cut a hole in the prison fence and escaped with another inmate. She was then found in Roswell, New Mexico 2 days later and sent back to prison for the final time.